Scientists ask people to sit alone in a room with their thoughts. No phone, no music, no distractions, just themselves for 15 minutes. Some chose to give themselves electric shocks instead. Not because they were told to, not because they had to. They chose it. Physical pain over mental stillness. Think about what that actually means. These weren't people in crisis. They weren't suffering. They were just alone with their own mind. And that was enough. Which raises a question that's more uncomfortable than any electric shock. Why does silence make some people so difficult to be alone with themselves? This is Kaino's D.M.T-Lounge, where we have deep, meaningful talks. And tonight we're asking, why does silence make some people so uncomfortable? And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly why it happens, and why it probably applies to you more than you'd like to admit. You've probably felt a version of this yourself. You wake up before everyone else. The house is completely quiet. No television, no conversations, no music. For a moment, it feels peaceful. Then your brain starts talking. A conversation from yesterday. A decision you've been avoiding. A message you never sent. An embarrassing moment from years ago that somehow still knows how to find you. And suddenly the silence doesn't feel peaceful anymore. It feels loud. Which is strange because silence isn't actually anything. It's the absence of sound. So why does the absence of something feel so overwhelming? The answer starts with something your brain is doing right now without telling you. Here's something scientists discovered that most people don't know. Your brain doesn't rest when you rest. In fact, for some people, the brain becomes more active the moment external demands disappear. Which raises a strange question. What exactly is your brain doing when there's nothing to do? Neuroscientist Marcus Rachel spent years studying this. What he found changed how we understand the mind. He discovered a system now called the default mode network. The name sounds complicated, the idea isn't. It's essentially the mode your brain switches into the moment it stops dealing with the outside world. When you're daydreaming, remembering, imagining, worrying, replaying, the default mode network gets to work. Which means something fascinating happens the moment silence arrives. The conversation outside stops. The conversation inside begins. And here's where it gets interesting. Because that inner conversation is not neutral. Your brain wasn't built to make you happy. It was built to keep you alive. And those are not always the same thing. Imagine one of your ancestors walking through the tall grass thousands of years ago. They hear a sudden rustle. What should their brain do? Assume it's the wind, or assume it might be a predator? The cautious brain survives. The relaxed brain sometimes doesn't. Over thousands of generations, human brains became extremely good at scanning for problems before they happened. Psychologists call this negativity bias. Your brain pays more attention to potential threats than potential rewards. One criticism can outweigh 10 compliments. One mistake can dominate an entire day. One awkward moment from years ago can find you in a quiet room at 7 in the morning. Your brain isn't trying to make you miserable, it's trying to protect you. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. The predators are mostly gone. The threat detection system stayed. Now it scans for different dangers. What if they don't like me? What if I fail? What if I made the wrong choice? And silence gives those questions room to speak. That's why some people can be surrounded by complete comfort and still feel uneasy the moment everything goes quiet. The danger isn't outside. The danger is being imagined inside. So what do? We escape. Have you ever unlocked your phone without knowing why? Opened an app, closed it, opened another one, then realized there was nothing you actually wanted to do? That wasn't boredom. That was escape. A tiny injection of stimulation, something, anything, and to occupy the mind before the thoughts got too loud. And modern life is the most effective silence avoidance machine ever built. There is always something available: a video, a notification, a scroll, a click. None of those things are inherently bad, but they can quietly train you to fear stillness. Because every time discomfort begins to surface, there is an instant exit. And when you always take the exit, something changes. The less time you spend alone with your thoughts, the less familiar your own mind becomes. And unfamiliar things feel threatening, which brings us back to the room and the people who chose the electric shocks. The researchers weren't being cruel. They simply wanted to know what would happen when people had nothing to do but sit with themselves. And what they found surprised them. Many participants said they didn't enjoy the experience. Some found it genuinely distressing, and a significant number, when given access to a device that could deliver a mild electric shock, chose to use it repeatedly. Not because they were in pain, not because they were broken, because being alone with your thoughts can be surprisingly difficult when you're not used to it. And maybe that's one of the strangest things about being human. We spend our entire lives with ourselves, yet many of us rarely stop long enough to listen. But here's what the researchers didn't expect. Not everyone struggled. Some people don't just tolerate silence, like they seek it. Monks, meditators, writers, hikers who deliberately leave the headphones at home. If silence triggers all of these uncomfortable thoughts, why would anyone choose more of it? What are they experiencing that others aren't? The answer is stranger than you'd think. Silence changes once you stop fighting it. At first, silence feels like an interrogation. Everything you've been pushing away suddenly walks into the room. Questions, regrets, fears, old stories running on repeat. But if you stay there long enough, something shifts. You start noticing the pattern, the same fears returning, the same worries looping, and eventually something important becomes clear. Not every thought deserves to be believed. Just because your brain says something doesn't make it true. This might be one of the most valuable things a person can ever discover. You are aware of your thoughts, which means you are not your thoughts. The voice in your head feels like you, but it's often just your brain generating possibilities, predictions, and interpretations. Some useful, some completely inaccurate. Silence gives you a front row seat to that process, which leads to something most people misunderstand. Most people think meditation is about emptying your mind. It isn't. Most experienced meditators will tell you that's impossible. Meditation is learning to watch your thoughts instead of immediately following them. Silence creates exactly the same opportunity. You begin observing your mind instead of being controlled by it. Now, here's the part that surprised me most. This isn't a new problem. The philosopher Blaise Pascal wrote that many of humanity's problems come from our inability to sit quietly alone in a room. He wrote that centuries before smartphones existed, before the internet, before television, before radio, and he still identified silence avoidance as one of humanity's core struggles. Which raises one final question. If we've always struggled with silence, what are we actually running from? The same questions that existed centuries ago still exist today. Who am I? What do I want? Am I happy? What am I afraid of? Those questions don't disappear when the noise is on. They just wait. And they get their turn the moment the noise stops. That's why silence feels so heavy after a breakup, after a loss, after a major life change. When the distractions fall away, you're left face to face with what's actually there. And that isn't always comfortable, but discomfort isn't always a bad sign. The gym is uncomfortable, Growth is uncomfortable. Honesty is uncomfortable. Sometimes discomfort is just a sign that you're paying attention to something that matters. And maybe that's the real reason silence matters. Not because it contains answers, but because it creates the conditions where answers can finally be heard. Silence doesn't create what's inside you, it reveals it. So, why does silence make some people uncomfortable? Because silence removes distractions. And distractions are often protecting us from thoughts we'd rather not face. Silence shines a light into corners of the mind that normally stay hidden. For some people, that feels threatening. For others, it feels like freedom. But either way, silence is rarely empty. It's full of memories, questions, fears, dreams. It's full of you. And that's why it feels so different from person to person. If your mind feels like an enemy, silence feels dangerous. If your mind feels like a companion, silence feels like rest. The silence itself hasn't changed, only the relationship has. So, the next time you find yourself reaching for your phone after 5 seconds of doing nothing, pause. Just for a moment. Ask yourself what you're trying to escape, because it might not be silence at all. It might be a thought, a feeling, a question, or a truth you've been avoiding. The most interesting thing about silence isn't what it takes away, it's what it reveals. And understanding yourself still happens the same way it always has. In the quiet. This has been today's deep, meaningful talk. Hope you enjoyed the DMT. The deeper you look, the stranger things become. Until next time, keep asking why.